Welcome to a broadcast of the recent Lorain County Commissioners' General Meeting. Unless otherwise announced, meetings are held Wednesday morning at 9:30 at the Administration Building, 226 Middle Avenue, 4th floor, downtown Elyria. These are public meetings and you are invited to attend. Agendas are posted prior to the meeting at www.loraincounty.us. Click on Departments to see the Commissioners page, then click on View Agenda.
Now, good morning. Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's my dog this morning, yeah. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the June 21st meeting of the Lorain County Board of Commissioners. Our thought for the day is Proverbs 17:22. A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a broken spirit saps a person's strength. And I have the dog from the kennel this morning.
And it's officially summertime.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Thanks for reminding me. Officially summertime. And we have, what, 22 dogs, you said?
22 dogs.
22 dogs. And when's he available?
Perhaps 24.
We have a cute little male albino Shih Tzu mix. He's very sweet, great personality, very fluffy and soft. My kind of cute little dog. Come out to the Lorain County Dog Kennel, pick him up. We have 22 other dogs that we could use your help with in adopting. So, inexpensive way to make your family happy for years and years to come. So, come on, little guy.
It's going.
We get you a purse and put it in, you know, travel bag.
Oh, yeah. I can put it
You
in
and
my
Paris
man
Hilton.
purse.
Paris Hilton.
Yeah, Paris Hilton. Well, Brad Pitt does it, you know.
Yeah, you could just slide the dog around on the floor, mop your floors, dust mop them.
Shame on you.
You ever see them?
Shame.
I've seen it before. It's really cute. They love doing that. It's fun.
Okay.
So, right, Will, right?
Not in a bad way.
I'm not answering the handle.
Madam Clerk.
We're going to have two presentations today. 9:45 is going to be Elaine Georgas, and at 10 o'clock Don Romancak regards to Willow Creek.
Okay.
Under resolutions, number 1, investments.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kalo.
Aye.
Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Appropriations.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kalo.
Aye.
Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Transfers.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kalo.
Aye.
Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
No advances, no repayments, requisitions.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kalo.
Aye.
Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
No travel. Bills.
I don't think there were bills.
Yeah, there
There
were
were
bills.
bills.
Yeah, okay.
You signed.
White backs, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Never mind. Sorry, I did sign them.
Do you wanna make a
So
motion?
moved.
Okay.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kalo.
Aye.
Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Under the Commissioners, authorize various personnel actions as indicated on the summary sheet for employees within jurisdiction of Lorraine County Commissioners.
Mr. Cortez.
Thank you,
With all the
Madam
pins.
President.
What's with all the pins going on here?
When I found a couple of them laying around, thought I should wear them once in a while.
Three-star general.
Yeah.
Put the bars on. I was an enlisted man. I worked for a living when I was in the service. I do have a number of personnel issues I wish to discuss with the board, more specifically potential new hires at workforce development. Several of those, as you know, we've been advertising positions. We are going to be taking the adult dislocated worker and adult worker programs in-house. Those jobs have been posted on our website, and we've advertised those positions. I'm prepared to discuss possible candidates into those jobs. Several of those positions with you today. Further, I briefed you a little bit yesterday in executive session. I want to continue to talk about our ongoing labor negotiation with the United Auto Workers and Department of Job and Family Services. As I told you also yesterday, I'm trying to get a meeting scheduled to continue the negotiations. We rejected the fact-finding report last week, and while the UAW wasn't able to gain enough votes to reject, the members that were present showed a majority of them not agreeable to the fact-finding report, but they didn't have enough of a majority to reject it. So it was almost like a pocket veto. It was automatically accepted because they couldn't reject it, but we clearly looked at the numbers, and it was overwhelmingly the few folks that were there said no. So we have to decide where both sides are going from there. Of course, we continue to discuss our 911 operations with the steelworkers. And I updated you yesterday on the bridge. Maybe we'll tap that again today too. I want to revisit the purchase of real estate. I'm closing in on finishing that. And one pending legal matter. All of those topics are allowable under the Sunshine Act for executive session discussions. So to ask at the conclusion of our regular meeting today, we go into executive session and we talk about those items that I've explained. Thank you.
Thank you.
Approve and waive the reading of the minutes of June 14th.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Amendment Resolution 17349 on May 24, 2017, modifying various resolutions and adopt a fee schedule for legal counsel appointed by the courts to represent indigent criminal defendants. Amendment is to reflect clarification of domestic relations and common police courts breakdown of payments.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, just a little bit. This is just a change in regards to how the Public Defender's Office wanted us to change our resolution. I'd like to thank Domestic Relations and Common Pleas administrators for helping us get that all done and filling out all that paperwork. 'Cause
This got really complicated. You know, it was supposed to be such a simple thing, and it just got very complicated.
Well, we had to include the muni courts and all kinds of different things, right?
Well, that all rolls down, but what they wanted, everything was line itemed. You know,
Our
even though it was
old
the same-
resolution was nowhere near as complicated as this.
No, not at all, but, so, thank you very much for all your work in getting us together so we can get it done properly, so. End of my comments.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Under Solid Waste Amendment Resolution 1695, I think, or 16, no, it should be 16695, sorry. Adopted November 2nd, 2016, approving District Market Development Grant for Columbia Local School District in the amount of $1,270.27 for the recycled materials to be used to purchase 3 branches. The amendment is to reflect the correct account number.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Mr. Cortez.
Already?
I know.
Wow, that was really fast. Well, I do have a couple things to bring from the floor. Let me dance quickly here. I didn't realize we were reaching that point that quickly. Commissioner, I have a few items I did not get on the agenda, and that's with regard to workforce development. One of the things we have is the MOU with the partners. There's about 13 of them. That clarifies the roles and responsibilities and the cost sharing of the center, the one-stop center, the OhioMeansJobs Center now, as it's more formally known. And I need to get a resolution. We need to get that done by the end of the month. We still have one more meeting, but I'm trying to get it down to the state in a timely manner. The partners are all signing now. So I'd like to see if you would pass a resolution. It's standard fare. Every year we do it. Mr. Longo works on the formula along with the partners over there. Next year, the work on the MOU will be done by the one-stop operator, which is going to be a different functioning operator, probably the Workforce Institute, but we're not sure yet. But this is the things like the greeter at the front door is shared from different funding pools, and keeping the lights on, paying the rent. It all comes from several different funding sources, and the agreements are who pays for what, and that's all contained in that MOU. It's pretty much just housekeeping year from year. The percentages vary just a slight amount, and it's all based upon the cost allocation plan that's done by Maximus every year to come up with those shared costs.
think it's always important for the public to understand where the funding sources are coming from, because I think too often, i.e. even the initiative we did with Cabela's, people keep thinking, well, it's general revenue fund, what are you spending money on that for? And, that was from the bed tax, and lots of programs that we deal with here in the county, those are pass-through dollars, so it's always good to explain where the dollars are coming from.
Actually, Commissioner Lundy, thanks for the opportunity for that, because the money does wash through our budget, and just like airport funds, when people look at the airport, and how many times I've had somebody come up and say, why are you wasting $650,000, $800,000, depending on how the grant cycle works. It could be as much as $1.3 million. That one year we did $550,000 worth of improvements at the taxiways, and then what was it, 2 years ago, it was $1.2 million on the public aprons outside the fixed-based operations. So the budget actually looked like $1.6 million that year. And that was 5% match money. So 95% of that came from the FAA, and we only had 5% match locally. And most of that 5% match came from growing corn. So very little general fund money goes into the airport, roughly about $50,000 a year, unless we get an opportunity at a Stella grant, and we've asked for a little bit of extra money on occasion, if depending on how the corn season's gone. The workforce development dollars also pass through your budget. They do not identify sources. It just is in the budget, but it's all federal money. It's 100% federal money. So it's a kind of an in and out type of fund. None of it's general fund money, but we're the legislative body that decides where it goes and how it's handled. And of course you have the Workforce Investment Board that in conjunction with the legislative body works on those programs in Lorain County. And it's quite significant because the dollars are in the millions when you put all the youth programming and the adult programming together. Not to mention that there's other agencies dealing with funds that cobbled together amplify those resources. So, but no, thank you, Commissioner Lundy. None of it is general fund money. It's all federal monies.
Okay, we need a motion to approve. Do you need to read part of that, or?
You want me to? Approving and enter an MOU with the Workforce Development Board, the partners OhioMeansJobs, Lorain County, to identify and coordinate a variety of workforce development resources to create a seamless, integrated system that addresses the needs of employers and job seekers. Program year 17 is in the amount of $271,591, and year 2018 is $326,146, effective July 1st, 2017 through June 30, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Mr. Lundey.
Aye.
Commissioners, this is an administrative agreement for payroll services to work on the work experience folks. I probably could have just signed it for the WDA, but I want you to be aware of it because it's in an agency. When you designated the Workforce Development Agency to CCMEP agency within Lorain County, it created a bit of a problem. And I've been moving programming around and redefining roles so that we don't end up in conflict with WIOLA under the CCMEP. One of those became clear to me that we no longer could be the employer for some youth work experience program because we were the provider of the services. And we had always done the payroll services out of our payroll department, the Commissioner's payroll department, because we were not the direct provider of those services. When you designated the WD agency as the local agency, remember you had two choices,
right.
Job and Family Services or the WDA. We created that conflict, and slowly but surely I've been unraveling those conflicts all year. It was a great decision, but WIOLA came out about just shortly before that, created some challenges, and then this came out. The state rolled this out a few months later. This is another one of those conflicts that I'm trying to straighten out. The Port Authority is going to step in and do the payroll services for the youth experience programs, and they'll be running that through all their accounting services, and they have a small service charge for that, which is allowable under the program. So it's in an agency, it's cost effective, It's much better than trying to go out and get payroll services on a limited basis, which can be quite costly. It's just a solution to the problem, and we're just moving on. But I wanted you to be aware, and resolution would be great. I know it's an administrative task, but just problem solved.
Madam Clerk.
Interagency between WDA and Lorain County Port Authority regards to TANF-funded pay work experience, June 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2018, in the amount not to exceed $477,611.86.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Believe it or not, that's all I got.
Okay.
So I yield. Thank you.
Mr. Ennis.
I have one matter of pending court action to discuss with the commissioners in executive session.
Do you want to do the
Sure.
First up is we're going to go to Elaine Georgas, Alcohol and Drug Addiction Services Board.
Good morning, Elaine.
Good
Good
morning.
morning. Good to see you all.
You too.
So,
Let me know when you're ready, okay?
okay, I can be ready whenever. So on behalf of the Alcohol Drug Addiction Services Board of Lorain County, we've been the fiscal agent for Communities That Care of Lorain County, which is Lorain County's drug-free community coalition since 2003. In 2009, we were able to secure a federal grant to designate us as a federally funded DFC, Drug-Free Community Coalition, from the Office of National Drug Control Policy. The work we do is collaboration with anyone that has connection with young people to address substance abuse issues and other risky behaviors, to find a way to implement evidence-based prevention programs, practices, and policies. As part of the grant, but as part of the work we do, we check in probably every 2 or 3 years with the kids, mainly about their drug use issues. But for the last probably 3 rounds, we've also partnered with the mental health system and the county health system to take a more holistic look at the whole health of our kids and find a way to problem solve. And to do that, we had the Pride Student Survey done last fall. We kind of processed through that over some time through our data work group. We had meetings with most of the school districts, with their teams, and some of our other providers. And then last month, we had a couple of community rollout sessions, which Commissioner Lundy was able to attend one of them, to talk about the data, but not just the data, but also what can we do about it. So what you have is the presentation, and I guess I'm looking for the presentation on the screen.
It's coming.
Yeah, Ernie's
up?
gonna-
Yeah.
Okay. So, it's what students say about drugs, mental health, and health. It was their voice. This survey was partnered, again, with our board, the Lorain County Board of Mental Health, the Lorain County General Health District, through Communities That Care of Lorain County. We used Pride Surveys, which is a group out of Marietta, Georgia. They've been surveying kids around the country for a very long time. It's a very well-tested survey. They've got their studies. They have little lie detectors, so if a kid answers one thing here and it's kind of false over in another, it kind of, that gets weeded out. We had the ability, and so those were specific about drug issues. We had the ability to add 10 additional questions specific to mental health for suicide and depression, and then health questions about their nutrition, their activity, and their screen time, because we know all of that kind of connects through. Let me kind of find out where we're at here. Okay. This is also, again, we've started this in 2003. About every 2 or 3 years we've done this. The exception in 2011, the community health partners came together, which were the hospitals, the health districts, us, mental health, and the metro parks. And we all in 2011 blocked with the Hospital Council of Northwest Ohio to do the survey. We were back in 2014 to do our work because we had, I think we had more durable numbers to get from the districts, and we're back in to be the survey focus for the youth piece of our county's health improvement plan. The questions that were asked, about their frequency of drug use, how old they were when they started using, when and where they use, and their perceptions, about the risk of substance use, the parental, how do their parents think, what do they think about their friends using, is it available in their community, also the risk and protective factors that we know could exist in their lives, and then again the questions about suicide, depression, and physical health. So how can we use this data? We take this back in each school district, we meet with them for a similar, overview of their data, and then we work with them about solutions and how we could work with them with policies, or what kind of programs might they need, or what can we do together back in the community? Because at any given day, kids go home. We can't just ask our schools to take care of everything with the mandates they have, but they're about academic success, and you'll see some of this data can put a little dent in that. If they're using before school, they can't get to academic success. It helps, data helps drive decisions. We know a lot of qualitative information, but this really puts a good data point on, for funders, for providers. So we're not just coming up with things without a basis of relevancy, and it'll help us ask why we're moving the needle. And this is really the prevention focus. There's very good data that says of adults who become addicted when they're adults, 9 out of 10 of them have used any kind of addictive substance before they were age 18. That could be tobacco, that could be alcohol, that could be something like a prescription medication. So what we need to do is look at that data point. We also know that, some amazing data that, 50% of kids whose parents sit down with them and have dinner and talk to them about drugs are less likely to even start using alcohol or other drugs. So looking at the opiate issue we have right now, we've got to prevent the next wave of kids to start using any substance, and to look at why they're using and what's going on in our communities and how we could change that. Okay. So there were 2,200 students from 13 school districts that participated in the survey. This was during the fall of 2016, between October and November. There was a passive consent process through the schools to get the parents informed. There was one district that did actually an active consent. They really wanted their parents to say, do you want them in or out? We had a really good equitability, about 30-33% between each grade, between 6th, 8th, and 10th, and about balance between the males and the females that participated. It was an anonymous survey. It was 2 pages. It took less than a classroom time. The teacher or whoever just kind of talked about the survey. They sat over there. The kids took the survey and turned it in over there. There's no name identifying information. It just asks, are you male, female? What grade are you in? And that was it. So the way Pride Survey does it, it's, the kids feel that they could honestly answer these questions. So there is good news. Like the nation, overall substance abuse for our kids, including alcohol, is down. It's on a downward trend. But you'll see in some of this data, there's still some things going on that causes us to say we can't take our eyes off of prevention, because there's still some things happening. 82% of our students report no use of alcohol, which since 2003 that we've surveyed has been the #1 substance that our young people tend to use. 21 is the legal age in Ohio, so most of these 6th, 8th, and 10th graders are not 21. So that lends to, norms and access and availability. But, there's a significant amount of our kids that are great kids. They're not using alcohol. They might be using substances, but most of them aren't. So, we've got to capitalize on that. This survey and the last survey was the first time e-cigarette use came in. And overall, e-cigarette use is higher than cigarette use for our young people. Not significant, but again, it's an untested product. And the surveys show, or the data shows, that when kids are trying e-cigarettes, they're trying it because it's something new. They're not using it as a replacement to stop smoking. So, again, with it being an untested, unregulated item, and again, I believe in Ohio, it's supposed to not be available for anyone under 18. So they're getting it somehow to use. Their perception of risk of using alcohol and marijuana is the lowest, 50% and 70%. So we look at that. So if their use is down, they're still not perceiving these substances as being as risky as other drugs. So something's going on in their frame of saying, it's okay, we're accepting of this in our community. And the data shows that most of the time when they're using at a friend's house and on the weekends. So how do we get to that? If we think of, kids left alone on a weekend, what could happen? Or again, there might be a consequence, and that might lend to, what they're doing during the school week. They may have to come back to school with a consequence, or something could happen. Or I always tell my kids, nothing good happens for a young person after midnight on any time, So we just all have to look at that in our communities. So some of the other news that happens with this survey, 15.4% of our students ever reported seriously considering attempting suicide. If you look at that, some of these numbers are like 1 is not the right number. Anything less, we've got to get there. 8.6% of all students reported actually attempting suicide. in the last 2 years, the way the question was asked. 26%, about a quarter of them, reported feeling sad or hopeless for a period of 2 weeks or more over a period of time. Those are lens for, diagnosis of depression, which could also lead to, if they're using substances to cope, or if they're using substances and they become depressed. We've got to look at those as serious factors on how we address what they're feeling in our community. Do they feel a sense of hopefulness? How do we change that in the work we do? And these kids are not, the kids we can point out. 73% of these kids that are reporting any use or suicide or depression make good grades. We've got the Breakfast Club here. We've got any child that may have signs of depression, suicide, not sleeping at all because they're on the screen or using a substance. So we can't pinpoint that kid that's going to have some issues. So part of it is we've got to look at the wholeness of everything we do. And 36% of the kids report taking part in school activities, and those are the highlights. So again, these kids are involved, they're active, they make good grades, but there's still some points of decision that they're making. And so what we do is try to drill into that.
Elaine, these students who are feeling sad or hopeless, is this tied to social media? Is it tied to bullying?
Well, you wonder, right? Because there is a statistic about screen time in here. And,
okay.
It could be, they have a new world on how they communicate. They communicate with this thing that's, we used to call it a telephone to use phone calls, and they're really living in that world. They're spending a significant number of time, that's not school mandated time, on social media. Over the year that Netflix movie 13 Reasons Why came out, we heard a lot of conversations that kids were watching this movie about a girl who actually completed suicide. And that if they're at risk, there's studies to show about Facebook. Facebook is supposed to be, so popular, but for a kid who's isolated and turns on Facebook, or some of us, we see, they're going on vacation, they're having like the time of their lives, and look at me. So, social media may mostly play into that, but also some of the other things that go on. So, we look at that. 22% of the students report an average of screen time over 5 hours daily. That's not schoolwork. They're at school about 8 hours. They may sleep, 2 to 6 hours? 5 hours, they're on screen time. So, what happens in between there? So again, that's a significant marker. Food, you've got to feed your brain, your body. Only 11% of our kids are eating 4 or more fruits or vegetables daily, and 8% are eating less or in vegetables. So we've got to do something about it, because again, if you have a healthy inside, you may be, making better decisions otherwise if you feel good. Although 52%, 55% of the students report being physically active for at least 60 minutes for 5 to 7 days. So that amazes me when I look at all this together. They're like on their screens, they're active, but they're not eating. These kids are really multitasking. There's a lot going on with them. So it's just interesting when we put that all together. I'm going to go real quick into the subsets of that. So the alcohol and other drugs, we look at past 30-day use, which shows a trend. Our highest use is over on the alcohol side, which is the far left side. 17% of our 10th graders reported using alcohol in the past 30 days, 5% of our 8th graders. You see that jump that goes from 5 to 17%, up from 1% of our 6th graders, 1.4%. The next one is e-cigarettes for our 8th graders, but marijuana for our 10th graders. And then we go to prescription drugs, tobacco. Heroin numbers have been down over the last surveys, 0.2, 0.3. And we know that. We know with the opiate issue, people don't start turning to heroin until after age 18. But there are a few kids, very small amount, that have reported using heroin from the 6th, 8th, and 10th grade side. With 0 on our 6th grade, 0.4% for our 10th grade. Prescription drug use, and again, the way prescription drug use was questioned to them, it was something not prescribed to you by a physician. So it was really about going to the misuse ability. The data was 0.6, 1.0, and 2.9 for our students. But again, we know there's a clear link between prescription drug misuse and the heroin epidemic as people get older and later in life. Where they're using, between home and a friend's house. The last surveys, it's mostly been at a friend's house, but we're starting to see overall, a higher number of kids, using at home and using at a friend's house. Last time we surveyed, the prescription drugs they reported using at home, the other substances they used at a friend's house. They're also using at school, in a car, and in a car, anything with, driving under the influence or any other, knowledge or behavior. We've got to pay attention to that. And again, when they're using, mostly on weekends, but we also have had students reporting on weeknights, after school, during school, and before school. So again, with schools, we ask them, look at your policies. Schools that have drug test policies, are they enforced? What are they doing? But again, it's backing up to say, we've got to get kids coming to school ready to learn. So, that's how we work in partnership with the schools, by knowing that kind of data point. Their perception of risk, the dip is with marijuana, mainly for our 10th graders and our 8th graders, of really, as so goes the nation, they're just perceiving that marijuana as the least riskier of all those substances. And there's actually a partnership attitude study that kids have said, if marijuana were legal in my state, I'd probably start using it. So whether it was legal, however, that was just the headline a few years ago when it was happened. So, we just have to pause and look at that. We know that one community in our county is looking at a cultivation site. We've been working with the commissioner, and they want to start a prevention group just to kind of pay attention to that part of, we have it, we're going to have it. So how do we make sure that, we make sure our kids know this is not accessible to them without a prescription? It's not something you should try to get to use, because our data shows with tobacco, e-cigarettes, and alcohol, again, all of those are not supposed to be of use by them, but they're getting access to it. So, some of the work we do is with cities. To figure that out. And I want to say on the alcohol side.
Yeah, Elaine, isn't Colorado already finding that the perception of risk by youth concerning marijuana is actually down? Yes. As a result of the legalization in that state?
Yes. We follow the Rocky Mountain high-intensity drug trafficking area. Every 6 months does an update about what's going on, and they followed Colorado pre-legalization of recreational and medicinal, and we just looked at their study from September. Not only is their perception of risk going down, more kids are going into treatment, and there are more very young people going into hospital emergency situations for poisoning of those edibles. And so, however we do this in Ohio, we've really got to figure out the control factor on how we don't have this accessible to our young people. So, the data just keeps, we pay attention to that. And so on our lens, we're cautious about that. Again, we're not going to fight it because it's a law. It's been voted on by our voters. But we have to protect our young folks, and that's kind of the work we do on that. Their perception of their parents and friends. And 6th graders really trust everything their parents say, so, they're very high, like in the 90s of, my parents would feel it's wrong or very wrong if I use. It goes down, it's still not bad, it's called belief in the moral order. We think all our kids want to do good, but just you say what's around them, 90% and 80% for all of our kids, would their parents feel it's wrong or very wrong for them to use? So how do we capitalize on that? How do we engage parents more with education, with knowledge about that? Then we go to their friends, and again, their friends are their friends, and they may or may not challenge them. Most interesting fact on that, our 10th graders, would they feel it's wrong or very wrong for their friends to use? 90s and 80s for our 8th graders and 6th graders, that they'd feel it's really wrong for their friends. And when we get to our 10th graders, down to 65 and 53% for them to feel it was wrong for their friends to use alcohol or marijuana. So it's like they're backing off, or they're like, all right, it's cool, I don't mind. But knowing the risks that can come out of that, how do we engage the power of a friend if a friend needs something? Availability, similar, do they know? Is it fairly easy or easy to get? The highest overall is alcohol. We've been successful now in 4 communities to have the social host ordinances toughened, because one of the pieces is somebody's offering it to them, or there's a retailer with a liquor permit. So we've got 4 communities that have tightened that side of it. So a parent or a home could possibly be charged with neglect for providing alcohol to someone who's not their own child, because we know that's the primary place, or they know it's easy to get in our communities.
Did Avon Lake recently? pass
Avon
something?
Lake, Lorain, Amherst, and Elyria.
Okay.
So far, yes. Protective factors, and again, these aren't the kids that we'd think, they're taking part in school activities. Some of them, their parents are talking about the dangers of drugs, or parents are setting clear rules, or they're taking part in community activities. So it's just, as we look at all of this, we just kind of get intrigued on that. Mental health and depression and suicide. Again, I talked about 26% of the students, quarter of them, feeling sad or hopeless. 21% of 8th grade jumps up to 35% for our 10th graders. So again, you think about, what's in the life of these students. 8th graders, they're the big kids in junior high, and all of a sudden they're becoming the low man on the totem pole when they go to freshman. Or 10th graders, we're earlier starting about, as soon as they walk into high school, what are you going to do when you're done? This. And so you look at some of the pressures of a person growing up. So we've got to address this because the way the question is, it can lend to signs of clinical depression, and then that could spiral into other issues and behaviors for any of our young people. The other piece about considering and attempting suicide, 6th graders is a data point that on the mental health side, I know they're very concerned with addressing. It starts just bubbling up to 6th to 8th to 10th grade, up to 18%. So again, with them considering, the attempting suicide kind of takes a little dip down for the 8th graders. So, we kind of talk about what can we do about that? And we tie to the next data point of asking them, so if you're feeling depressed or suicidal, who do you talk to? The gray is no one. We always want a young person to have somebody to talk to if they're feeling depressed or suicidal. The most significant number of our 10th graders, our 8th graders are, wanting to talk to a friend. So we want to make sure that their friends have the power to listen, to sit down and go, what does that really mean? What can I do about that? Or can I talk to someone about what you're telling me instead of, oftentimes when we hear of a suicide, somebody finally says, oh, they talked about that, but we didn't do anything. So we've got to look at that. And there are still numbers within the 10 to 14% that they will talk to their parents if there's something going on. But again, so we've got to balance that and reduce the no one. So we want to make sure that every young person has somebody that they know they could turn to and talk to. Finally, with activity and nutrition, again, the students who use 5 or more hours of screen time, let me just get that data point, 22% of all kids, again, think of an average day. They're in school, they try to sleep 5 or more hours of none of that time. It starts at 15%, goes up to 30% of our 10th graders. So again, how might we capitalize on that? That's how they get their information. That's how they communicate. So what is it we could do as community partners to engage them with that? Physically active, again, we've got a little bit of work to do on our fruits and veggies, and mainly our veggies. The data's there. Our 6th graders, below 20%, but they're eating, and then as they get older, they start eating both of those less. And again, so that's just a balance point. I can't eat fruit 4 or more times a day. I appreciate that any of them can. We're supposed to be at 8, every day. So, I think we all have to challenge ourselves to get there with that. And then the physically active piece. The good news, again, 50% or more of these kids are physically active for at least an hour a day, 5 to 7 days a week. The lower numbers are below 10% that they're very sedentary. So, looking at the wholeness of a student, a young person, it's really what's it like to live in Lorain County? What's around them to do that? We are doing a lot. We can do more. There are evidence-based prevention programs, practices that we do. Schools are now coming up with, tobacco-free campuses and cessation. With the prescription drugs, we talk about the drug take-back, the 24/7. There is training, professional development through the mental health system for schools and for community folks. The health department is doing food service training offered to the schools because oftentimes that might be their best way to start some better dining habits. So we've seen now more schools with salad bars and more healthier choice options, and they might be able to take that home, and we're hearing more about farm to community opportunities. So then when they come home, they go, oh yeah, I had broccoli for the first time, can we get some? So we're looking at that. We're working wherever we can in collaborative fashion. We're with the United Way for the collaborative that works with 5th to 8th graders, and they use this data to figure out together how we address that. There are other partnerships that go on, so none of us can do this alone. Let me see what else I can cover. So again, we kind of are taking notes and would take any input about what else can we do. Who else is kind of doing things that we could capitalize, and how do we prioritize to make sure that our resources are most effectively used to make the dent in the needle that we have. So we appreciate your time, and if there's any questions, I'd be more than willing to answer them.
Yeah, as I pointed out, Elaine, the day at the meeting, I guess the big concern is, when we look at this data here, and it seems like the students are all saying, well, during the week with school and everything, I kind of stay away from things, but, on the weekend, okay, that's probably when I engage in some of this activity. And, here we are, summertime, and they're not in school during the week.
Right.
And that's why, I was saying to you that's why I think any kind of programming that helps to somehow connect with students during the week is an important component.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. We can't put this all on the schools to problem solve. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to work with providers, open their doors, or just even parents, finding, top 10 of things to do with your kids, or, and even the simple thing about having dinner with your kids anymore, take them out to eat or just spend time with them, go to the beach, great day, so.
And it's 26% of the students being sad, unhappy.
Right.
I don't know, I just think back to my earlier years. I just don't remember a lot of my classmates talking about being sad or depressed or whatever. There's always a few, but I don't remember, larger numbers. And it's just, you just wonder what contributes to all that.
We're going to dig into that, and we're also going to back up. So this was at 6th grade data. We're going to see what we can do to start addressing, earlier grade to see what's going on in their lives. We know with the opiate issue, these young people are facing adverse childhood effects, to know of somebody, of losing a parent to an overdose. If we don't address that then, there's a project at Elyria schools. They're showing a video in 4th graders about the whole overdose piece with the police and the health department, and they've told us 4th graders are raising their hand that they know somebody that's overdosed. So, so I said to the folks that are doing, I'm like, so what were you able to do? Have you connected that child to somebody? Because you can't just push that under the rug, because what we know about adverse childhood effects that can, if they're not addressed, can turn into issues later in life, crime, other issues, addiction. So it's all hand in hand.
Prevention is key to this, for sure. We just heard yesterday that Montgomery County had 400 overdoses in a 6-month period. Yeah. This is critical stuff. It's not, it's even more important now than it even used to be. I got a text from somebody yesterday that I think they were in Massillon, and they had a sign that showed how many addicts, how many overdoses, how many people in treatment, how many people died of the overdose. I think the sheriff may have put it out, but maybe Licata on their sign out there or something. We just got to keep, plugging away and getting the information out there, change the stigma that's associated with it, and realize that these people need help. So yeah, getting them young helps, I'm sure, a lot. So prevention is, like I said, key to this.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of information in that.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
As you know, I'm putting something together.
Yes.
I think we may be ready to go next week. I need to talk with you. I'd
Big,
like you to
it's
be
big.
big. Well, not big, but I make things bigger than they are.
Well, we have a meeting scheduled Monday. Is that too late?
I probably need to talk to you before that.
All right,
I'd like you to be part of, I think I have it all cobbled together. I'm still missing a few minor pieces, but I'd really like to make your organization part of what we're doing and the announcement and how it all meshes together.
Good.
So if we could have a conversation this afternoon, maybe just phone conversation is fine. It's
Okay.
But I want to bring some data sets in with what we're doing to demonstrate why we need to be doing what we're going to start doing next week, hopefully. But it's still, even when we get launch what I want to launch next week and bring all the folks together, it's still going to be months in the work. So I'll, if I can, I'll have Sandy call you set up just about 15 minutes.
Sure, and I want to let you know that Ohio, again, because of our data being one of the highest states in overdose, did receive some of the 21st Century Cures money. And Lorain County is in Tier 1, which is like almost call it ground zero. There's a host of, I think, 10 counties. So we also have some resources. And in fact, this morning, I was telling Commissioner Kalo, we were just at Mercy ER. We're about to unveil, it's called a warm handoff. So if an overdose survivor gets to the ER, they're going to call up here within an hour or two, get somebody in front of them and try to engage them, limit them from just walking out to use again. But we've got, so I'd love to share with you both sides and pull it together. We're also, we've had some really good friends giving us some good data that we could probably share, and we're going to create a data work group. We have an awesome intern that's about to start with us who wants to dig into all that. So we could help each other, I think, and make a big difference here, finally.
Great, thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, we have a real uphill climb. I was reading some of the online comments from readers of some of the stories, talk about our drug enforcement issue and things like that. And it's just very sad, very disappointing to see how some folks actually feel about this. A lot of folks saying, we'll let these people die.
Right.
It's very sad, very disappointing. These are loved ones, somebody's son, daughter, brother, sister, mother, father, whatever the case may be. And, you can't save everyone, and you can't save some people from themselves. But, a lot of good people end up with an addiction issue. It's just the way they're wired. And I've heard so many stories of great people who just got addicted and went down the wrong path. And, but we can help a lot of people. We can save a lot of people. We can turn their lives around, make them productive citizens again, taxpayers and good parents and owning homes and all those things. So it can be done. But like I said, it's just sad and disappointing to see a lot of folks commenting that these people should just be left to die.
Right.
That's not the church I go to on Sunday.
I know. Yeah. So thanks, and we'll talk later, Jim.
Thank you.
Another presentation, Coldwater.
Yep.
Come on up. Don Romancak. You can introduce them.
Thank you, Board, for providing us a brief opportunity to bring you up to date on some of the projects that we have been working collaboratively with Eaton Township on. So you may recall we were awarded a $600,000 grant to do water.
And let's change the screen, though. It still has everything from Board up there.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay. As you may recall, we've received a $600,000 grant through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative to build off of some previous planning work that the board had helped put together through the Black River AOC. We identified the Willow Creek watershed in Eaton Township as a critical watershed where we could really do some good. We were awarded the $600,000, designed a stream restoration project through Eaton Township Park with the Township Trustee's permission and encouragement. That project is now about complete, so we'll be able to give you a little update there on what it looks like, and hopefully as the grass and the greenery comes and gets established, we'd like to do a more formal ribbon cutting to really open it up and be able to have people on site and be able to see what it was that was done. We've also done work at Margaret Peak Preserve in Eaton Township, restoring wetlands. And all of this has, from my stormwater background, an important part in that we are actually expanding our ability to detain water, to treat the stormwater, and to improve the health of our Black River, which is still an area of concern. But we are working towards getting it delisted, be able to hold more economically beneficial uses, such as the Cabela's tournament this last weekend. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kristen Risch, who's the principal, Chip Wentz, who did most of the field work out here and is formerly of our Soil and Water Conservation District. And then also we have Dick Knechges from Eaton Township as well. feel free to ask any questions as they occur. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, Kristen, Chip? Chip?
Thank you very much for having me today. Good morning. Let's see if we can get the PowerPoint queued up. Okay. Don set me up pretty well. We're going to discuss the Willow Creek Stream Restoration Project. What I can say is this project's been a great source of pride for Coldwater and myself personally. And I think I've discussed with you folks before. I'm a Lorain County resident. It's been a privilege actually to be able to enact change on projects that are important to this county, important to the people that live here. I hope you place as high a value on projects like these as I do. So again, Don set it up pretty well. That was a $600,000 grant. We've been able to restore about 800 linear feet of Willow Creek. This supports efforts by our SWAC, supports regional efforts to address hindrances to the Black River and to the watershed. And so what was this project designed to accomplish, right? When we're in the design phase, we have a couple clear goals in mind that we want to hit. Number one on those is to restore an active floodplain, create bankful benches, which we'll get into that in a little more detail, but primarily to give us some flood storage. We all know Eaton Township is a great candidate for flood storage in general. Anyone that lives there will tell you. Along with that, our next goal is to improve water quality through the creation of a wetland basin, through the storage of stormwater. We're able to improve water quality through the assimilation of sediment and nutrients, right? When we have high flows during floods, that's when we see excessive sediment, nutrients, all of the above, and this project aims to address some of those, right? Next on our list is to actually create habitat. This goes hand in hand with any sort of ecological restoration project. We do that in stream and we do that in the riparian area. So I want you to just remember these 4 points. We're going to kind of circle back around them continually as we go through the presentation here. So pre-construction conditions. This is the park prior to any work done. What you see is a huge grassy area and you see the channel in the background there. That channel is operating, was operating more like a ditch than it was a stream. It wasn't able to utilize its floodplain as it's intended to pre-construction. Vertical erosive banks and an incised channel. Again, that looks like a ditch. I think any of us in Lorain County, we're pretty familiar with this kind of a setup. The erosive banks, that's when we have high flows, it's able to break apart that soil and carry it with it. It of course, distributes throughout the stream column and deposits downstream. This is one of the larger pollutants that we see in the area and in the Great Lakes in general. So we have an absent riparian buffer and a lack of in-stream habitat. So what you see at the margins along the channel there is you see some vegetation. However, it's grasses, small herbaceous type material. Its ability to process nutrients and sediment is pretty limited. So the goal of this project was to enhance that buffer, create it, expand it, give us those benefits to stormwater that we're looking for. And the channel itself, you see, right, reminiscent of a ditch. There's no woody material, no rocks, no real anything. So even from a biological perspective, that's a pretty limited stretch of stream. So this is the overall construction site plan. Our screens are a little bit smaller here, but what this involved was the installation of a bank protection rock along both sides of the stream, right, to combat the erosive forces of water. Another component of this was the excavation of what we're calling a wetland basin, right? It's similar to a basin I think we're all aware of as far as stormwater goes. This expands on that in that it's going to turn more into a wetland, right? It has a lot of native vegetation and herbaceous material that's able to process the pollutants that we're targeting here. And also there was the installation of 2 riffles, or rapids, maybe you might know them as. These are primary grade control structures. Again, add that stream habitat and provide a really nice aesthetically looking stream channel. So some of the details here, and again, I apologize, are a little bit smaller screens here, but we'll kind of expand on these in a few more slides. So through construction, slope grading, bank full bench construction, and a rock toe. What you can kind of see is that rock toe all along the shore water interface. Again, that creates habitat, that creates a stable channel, and reduces the propensity for erosion. Creating that bank full bench, you can see that level area of ground, right? What that allows is that stream to come up and spill over into that bench, right? It dissipates flow. It allows some of the sediment even to settle out. And again, just slows down the velocity of that stream to help reduce erosion. The actual slope grading, we see a nice 2-to-1 slope. That's a nice, gentle, rolling slope that, again, doesn't have the inclination to erode, allows us a good area to increase that riparian buffer, right, to install vegetation and really get the best benefit out of it.
Do me a favor, would you explain what a riparian buffer is?
Okay, yeah.
Some people tune into our stuff and we use terms and
sure.
Some folks just don't know what any of that stuff means.
Well, and my science background may be
That's okay.
faulting me a little bit
until I had this shot here.
So a riparian buffer is a corridor that runs along a stream, right? A corridor of vegetation, trees, shrubs, herbaceous type material, right? Little sedges, rushes, grasses, flowers. And when we talk about riparian buffer, we talk about the width of vegetation that is along that stream. As water flows overland into a stream, we want that vegetation to be able to capture that water in a sense. Plants uptake it. Nutrients settle, plants are able to uptake those nutrients as well. And soil, which has suspended in the water column, it's almost a physical barrier, these riparian buffers are. They're extremely important. They are problematic to some of our ditches, but when we're talking a stream restoration type concept here, riparian buffers are extremely important. And extremely important in this whole watershed. As agriculturally dominated, we've subsequently removed a lot of that buffer.
And they help with water purification, water clarification?
Absolutely. Water quality and water quantity. Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And I think the benefits of plants as it pertains to that are pretty well documented.
And one of the overall objectives is to remove sediment heading towards Lake Erie.
Exactly.
And these are the type of projects that we need to be doing that aids in that.
Exactly right. And especially a stretch like Willow Creek where we see those erosive banks. We have so much stormwater that comes from upstream, right? When you have such a force of water, being shoved through a channel that normally didn't accept that volume of water, erosion is a result and something that's pretty ubiquitous across the county here. Floodplain excavation, right? So that big grassy area we were talking about, where we've excavated about 4,600 cubic yards of material, that gives you a huge capacity to store stormwater, right? Store floodwater, where plants can do what they're designed to do, what they've been adapted to do. So you can kind of see the grade there, where it's not a pond, it's a basin, it has an outlet structure. What that was designed to do was to accept the floodwater from what we call a one-year event. A one-year flood means we have a 100% chance every year of having at least one flood like that. Maybe a 100-year flood is what you've heard before, right? FEMA talks in 100-year flood terms. And so this basin is designed to accept that one-year flood. And of course benefits to water quality as well. So riffle installation, I really like this picture. So this is in the process of installing that riffle. Now again, a riffle acts, it's benefiting us in multiple ways here. Of course, stream habitat, where we saw just a muddy, empty kind of channel. Now we have an amalgamation of various aggregate sizes of rock. And which is, of course, beneficial to fish, macroinvertebrates, and, of course, algae and plants. But it also acts as a grade structure, and this is supported by our modeling efforts, that prevents the stream from incising further, right? Anything that we've built here, it's going to stay here, and that's because of grade control structures. It's because of bank protection rock. These are very important concepts to projects like these, especially when they're of such high dollar amounts. We, of course, want to protect that infrastructure that we built. Okay? Native plantings. So, you've heard me harp on vegetation, and here's some of it in action here. Trees, shrubs, woody type materials are great for stabilizing the soil, reducing erosion, and of course the uptake of nutrients and processing soil, processing sediment. On the left-hand side, you see some nice trees, and especially when we have the ribbon cutting, they're actually quite striking out on site and really look nice. There's of course an aesthetic benefit to vegetation as well. In the wetland basin, that's where shrubs thrive, that scrubby kind of material that only grows yay high. And you can see Lester planting some of those in the right-hand picture. His back's turned to us. That's his better side. But anyhow, Jerry, this might be of particular interest to you. We've discussed live stakes before. Live stakes, typically willows, dogwoods, species that are prevalent in our coastal areas. You literally can harvest sticks off of a willow tree in the dormant season, stick them in the ground, and voila, you have a new willow tree. That picture there is probably a 3 or 4 foot willow stake that this is its first growing season. They're thriving at Willow Creek. Again, willows are a great, cheap, and effective way to promote soil stabilization, to increase that riparian buffer that we discussed earlier. So this is an overall site, an overall view of the site, and it kind of incorporates all of the elements that we've talked about. On the left, of course, is pre-construction. On the right, looks different. You got to look in detail a little bit, but you see that rock toe. You see that vegetation as it begins to expand outward and expand that riparian buffer. And of course, even at the ribbon cutting, and especially even next year after another growing season, that vegetation is going to be thick, lush, and doing what it's been designed to do. The wetland basin, so this really exemplifies it. On the left, it's just a mowed, relatively flat, grassy area. So again, we excavated 4,600 cubic yards of material out of there, and which maximizes the flood storage that you have associated with this project. The riffle structures, and this is really the stark difference. On the left, no cover, no in-stream structure whatsoever. On the right, of course, is that riffle. And you can kind of see all of the different aggregate materials in there. What's built across the stream is a weir of sorts with large angular limestone material. What that does is holds all of this smaller aggregate in place, right? That's very important biologically and of course, as a grade structure to keep aggregate in place and prevent prevent siltation in there. It's a really nice structure. They're quite striking right now.
That'll also prevent the rechanneling of the...
Exactly, right. And thank you for reminding me to hit that point again. As a grade control structure, it, and is supported by modeling, affects the water flow such that now this is functioning more like a naturalized stream, not as a ditch, not as a straight water conveyance structure, right? What that means is there's going to be low maintenance, associated with this stretch. So yes, riffles are very important biologically and from a structural standpoint in a project like this, especially when we're just working with a microcosm, right? We're working on a microcosm of the watershed as a whole, and this exemplifies it well. The vegetation community. Again, we had that low quality, almost absent riparian buffer. So I'd like to draw your attention to the right-hand side there. You can see various different colors of vegetation. That means there's different species there. You can see that margin of bank protection rock, which is, again, stabilizing that stream channel, providing some aesthetics, and giving you the benefits to water quality that we so desire in this county. And wildlife. You didn't think I could come here and not talk a little bit about it, right? So I saw a ninja turtle over there. I'm sorry, a painted turtle, basking on the riffle structure. So as an environmentalist, that's quite poignant. That's pretty profound for a guy like me. And of course, a crayfish there that I found exploring the habitat. I'm not sure what kind of crayfish that is, but when they're covered in garlic butter, I don't think it matters, right? So again, in summation, a project that's demonstrated a collaboration between federal, state, local, and private entities, and one that I've taken a great deal of pride in. It's one that we should continue to support projects like these. They provide real and tangible good. And I literally cannot wait for you guys to come for the ribbon cutting ceremony. Yeah. So I think next I'm going to turn it over to Kristen, unless you guys would like to have a few questions first.
Beautiful job.
Great.
Thank you very much. We can address them at the end if you
You
have
could
more.
tell that you're very passionate about it.
Very much. Well, and as a millennial too, as a young person in this county, it's very important, and I just thank you for the privilege.
No, thank you.
I believe there was just a few more slides.
I'll put you back on, it's no problem. I just thought maybe you wanted to say something. If you want to go right to the slides, I'll put you back there.
So Chip spoke about the existing grant project, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the new project that's coming up. Last fall, we had some folks from USEPA into town, and we looked at the Willow project site before we got started. And then we took them out to Margaret Peak, also in Eaton Township.
Can I start from, I don't know that I've told you guys about this. Don, this is the one we had some extra funding that we're...
This is actually the additional grant.
Mm-hmm. Right, so we may have just briefed by this, so you may be seeing a lot of this for the first time.
I spoke to Don about it earlier.
Okay, so yeah, you had a couple minutes briefing.
Yeah.
So...
Okay.
Ask the question, what are we doing, Don? What's going on? So he explained this to me.
So what happened was Congress approved the 2017 Great Lakes Restoration Initiative budget. After September of 17, we're not sure what'll happen with it. The Black River has been placed in the short-term priority box for removing the beneficial use impairments and trying to progress toward delisting the river as an area of concern. So what that means is US EPA is very interested in what all the stakeholders between the county and the city and the health department are calling our management actions. What are those projects that we need to do to be able to achieve that goal of removing the beneficial use impairments and delisting the river? So we've had lots of back and forth with US EPA on what those projects are. And to be honest with you, that list has changed quite a bit up until about last fall or winter. But when we walked the Fortune Ditch, Margaret Peak site, we said, we really didn't have enough in that first Willow Creek budget to do both of these sites and what we would like to do on both of them. So essentially what we seeded US EPA with was the idea of doing the same thing at Margaret Peak on Fortune Ditch that we just did on Willow. And you could see instant benefit. Chip just showed you if you build it, they will come. Turtle and crayfish right away, right? So you're getting the evident wildlife benefit. You're getting the water quality benefit, aesthetics, everything. So we sold it to them again, and so far it looks like they've taken the project on. They'd like us to submit another grant application for it. So this is a very scaled down concept here of taking the stream channel, putting another wetland beside it, building structure within the channel for aquatic habitat, and then getting also the flood reduction benefit out of it.
For reference, that's off of what road? Butternut Ridge. And what's that property that?
Margaret Peak Nature Preserve.
That's actually the
Yeah.
property. Okay.
So this would be an additional $600,000 through an amendment to the current grant. So since the current grant covered both sites, it's an easy amendment with USEPA. And again, it'll work on another 800 feet, but this time on Fortune Ditch. And we're proposing to build 1.5 acres of wetlands. We're gonna put the bankful benches along Fortune and also probably create a little more sinuosity in this channel than what we did on Willow. And again, all the plantings that are critical. A little bit of pre-construction conditions. This looks a lot like Willow, very linear, devoid of any in-stream structure for fish and bugs. There's just nothing below the water line for them to like except for mud, and that's not ideal, right? The other thing that a lot of our ditches like this don't have, you see the sort of herbaceous, low vegetation just along the edges that it's hard to mow or hard to trim, but what you don't see is shading. Shading of a stream channel is important to add to the types of diversity and habitat. A lot of fish don't like sun all day long, right? Same thing goes with the bugs, so giving them some shade here and there is a good idea. Same sort of goals. I won't read it again. You know, we've all got the idea. The ultimate goal is to remove the BUIs, and these are the 4 BUIs that we propose to work on with projects of this sort. And generally, the application is due here real soon. And we hope to probably get through design and start working on construction of this one next fall. USEPA has asked that most of the work on the Black River be substantially complete by September of 19. So after that, we're probably going to see a dip in what we can hope to get from USEPA and GLRI funding. And Don and I have talked about a little bit of more of the state funding that's out there for more future projects that you want to do. So, any questions?
No, nice
You do a
job.
wonderful job. Really happy
Yeah.
with you guys as our consultants on these projects, Kristen.
you. Yeah.
Chip, you guys do a great job.
Yeah.
Board, Mr. Cordes and I had a conversation earlier. We also have a little bit of money that's left over from the existing Willow Creek. And we have an opportunity, and this is just an idea. We haven't actually committed to anything yet, but we're looking at the possibility of doing something similar as far as habitat, where we'd be looking at perhaps 20, 25 acres and recreating perhaps what's known as an oak savanna. And this would be where we'd be planting bur oak trees, just a handful per acre, 2-3 oak trees per acre, and then prairie grass. What this would do is expand the amount and types of habitat that are out at Peak Preserve, and to then continue to also improve the water quality in that area, expand the ecological benefits, especially for the animals and the birds. And Peak Preserve is one of those areas that is actually a very well attended birding area, and so this will provide additional habitat for birds. And also, again, these projects that I call them soft economic development. One thing that wasn't mentioned was the contractors on Willow were local. The suppliers were local. The nursery was local. So we actually awarded probably over $450,000 worth of construction work, and the supplies were all Lorain County-based businesses. Site Tech was actually literally, I think they could have stumbled across the street to the project site. And so we would be looking to do something similar, but it would be at a much smaller scale in dollars, and it's just to be able to expend what little bit we have left over from the Willow and the initial Margaret Peak to be able to do something well. And we've had a great relationship with Eaton Township and the trustees.
Yeah, and this project on Willow Creek is very visible from Route 82
Yes.
road there. You can see it as you're driving east and west there from the road. So, and we have a package plant back in there. So this is, once it's grown and get another year or two, it's already amazing. It's going to be so much more. And there's a park there that's close by too for the Eaton to the States development there. So aesthetically, this is going to really improve that area significantly. There's a new development right across the street, so it improves the whole look of the area. But we'll get more information to you on the plantings of the Bur Oaks. You try to use up that funding. Clearly, want to make sure it stays home here and gets spent.
Don't want to send it back.
Not at all. I see Dick Knechges here, he's Township Trustee. Maybe he wants to add something.
Yep.
We need you to tell us your name, just because,
We know who you are.
even though we know. For the
My name is Dick Knechges, and I'm the administrative assistant for the Eaton Township trustees. And I'd just like to briefly, and cut me off because I get to talking and I don't realize about the time, but I recall 13 years ago, Jerry Ennis accompanied myself and one of the trustees at that time, and Margaret Peak gave us 100 acres of her farm to develop as a nature preserve, and that 100 acres now is the subject of what Don was talking about here in terms of the portion of Fortune Ditch that runs through the front of the preserve. It's a very unique area because it is a beach ridge. It was one of the ridges from the lakes that were established at the time of the glacial periods in Ohio. So that's why they're talking about putting an oak savanna there. We have a very high point in the middle of the land, but right now it's covered with soybeans. And that part of that land we dedicated this year, another 12 acres in front of our wetlands in the back, to where we now have about 55 acres of the preserve that is actually functioning as a preserve. And the efforts from when Jerry helped us draw up the deed, which she gave us the land as long as we would make it a nature preserve. And we have been, from that time forward, working on it. When we got the opportunity from the Black River RAP through the Health District to work on the park activities, we said, well, when they're looking for people that have a ditch that could be restored to something accompanying a stream, we said we have two areas. We put them in as candidates, and they were accepted. And I have been very, very pleased up to this point in time with the efforts that Kristen and Chip have made, with Don's efforts at community development. Lynn Ickes has been a stalwart helper for us because she worked at the township as our zoning inspector before she came to the county. And those activities have resulted in much the same kind of activities as Jim was talking about at the airport. We rent the land out to keep it from being grown up with invasive species. We get a little bit of money and we put in trails. We got about $50,000 in grants 7 or 8 years ago from the trails program at the state. So the birders are able to get back to the back of the land where we have 10 acres of forest, we have 5 acres of ponds, and we have wetlands surrounding them. And now the enhancement activities that the consultants from Coldwater are supervising have been very instrumental in helping us start to move that area that is nature preserve closer to the front of the property, where the people that come in as bird watchers can see it. Right now, if you drive down Butternut Ridge Road and you look off to your right, all you're going to see is a farm field essentially, and that portion of Fortune Ditch that they showed on the screen is where the water drains in the north end of the property. But we have, if you put the effort in to walk on our trail in the middle of the property up over the top of the ridge. Then when you look to the back of the property, that's where you'll see the 55 acres that the birders are very pleased with. And it's been very, for me, a project that has expanded the entire time I've worked with the township, and it still seems to be expanding well. And I would like to thank Coldwater and the Community Development Department for all the efforts they've made in supervising the excavation and construction activities that Site Tech, Big Trees, and the other contractors have put into the Willow Creek restoration. I was just down there Monday, and as they've described, everything is starting to thrive in terms of getting green very rapidly, and it's covering the matting that sits in the bottom of the basin that's necessary to hold all the vegetation there while it takes root and can become effective. And at this point in time, you saw the kind of enthusiasm that Chip was demonstrating for the activities that they're doing. And I can assure you that from the township standpoint in the park, not having to mow that part that would tend to stay wet for 7 or 8 months of a 10-month dry period in the fall and the spring is going to be a big help. And I think that one of the reasons that was chosen well is, as Jim indicated, when you drive down 82, you don't have to get out of your car. If you just have a chance to look off to your south side, you'll see that park restoration is right there. And if you pull into the very small area where we have a pavilion there, you can stop and you can look at it just right off of 82. So I thank you for all of your efforts, and up to this point in time, our trustees are very pleased with everything that has been done.
Good.
Wonderful.
Nice to
Thanks,
hear.
Dick.
Thank you. Take-
Let me remind the board, we also have a second stream restoration project that we're working on. I'd like to speak just briefly to it, because we'll have another presentation as that unravels. And then yesterday, Don and I both spoke about the area. You know, we worked through several organizations to obtain that use swale in Sheffield Township between the old Georgas Hole and the Board of Elections. That's really just a big hole in the ground right now. But with additional property back in there, we're working on some ideas to transform that into probably a wet bottom, but we're looking at the cost benefit. If we go wet bottom, that produces a whole avenue of what we can do over there with vegetation and some wildlife and some work on the water purity, you know, going through there. Dry bottom's a little less costly, but it gives us far less options.
Correct.
But I wanted to say something about the Kalo Township project, Elyria Township project that we're working on.
As you may recall, over the past, unfortunately, too many years, it feels like, we have been moving forward. We did acquire the land. Coldwater is actually doing a design very similar to what you've seen today with Willow Creek on Clinton Ditch. We've acquired 206 parcels from Our Lady of the Wayside, collaborating with the Port Authority and the Stormwater District. We hired Coldwater to do a stream restoration project. We actually applied for and received a $395,000 grant that essentially brings what originally was just going to be a stormwater detention basin, run-of-the-mill kind of boring, to Willow Creek type of project at the same cost it would have been for just the regular stormwater detention basin. Coldwater is currently a little beyond 70%. I expect us to be able to be coming forward in August to be able to give a presentation, as hopefully we will be releasing our bid documents to be able to have that project underway. But again, this is something that the Stormwater District, the Port Authority, the county, Elyria Township have all been working together on to address flooding issues in Elyria Township, but especially in Sheffield Township, where their town hall has sits on this same waterway. And with the design currently as preliminary as it is, Coldwater is able to maximize stormwater detention to the point where we're at about 13 acre feet of right now projected stormwater detention, which is significant. And then when you begin to take a look at not only what are we doing there with the quality and the habitat as well as the stormwater detention, working with the Port Authority and the land bank to be able to acquire that parcel next to the Board of Elections. I still have to review some of the drawings that KEM had done. We're going to be looking at least probably 17, 18 acre feet, which should eliminate, other than the very worst storms, flooding of the Sheffield Township Hall.
That should take care of, the Township Hall and Fire Department being, under a few feet of water when they have a significant rain event. Not to mention it's going to provide habitat back that doesn't exist now. That project happened by circumstances beyond our control. We were going in there for strictly a retention-detention project. Because they had logged, the previous year logged in the site before we got back in there and did not restore the site after the logging, and we couldn't get back in there. I remember that winter where it was 40 below zero or a couple of days, whatever, and we just couldn't get back into the site because it's way back. It turned into a wetland, and we had to rethink our strategy. So rather than just abandon any hope of a project back there, we decided to make something spectacular out of that. We could have just walked away from the land deal and not done anything, but we applied for the grants. We repositioned ourselves, took a new direction, and I think we're going to end up with a much better project. We're not holding back as much water as we originally wanted to. Hence, we went after the property a little further downstream. The land bank acquired the property through a tax foreclosure. It was a significant tax foreclosure. We saw the opportunity. It was transferred to the Port Authority. The Port Authority then, for costs, sold it to the Stormwater District, and we are now working on a project down through there. And a little further downstream, we have some options from that project that we want to work with the city of Lorain on, that we think we can alleviate quite a bit of flooding in the Clinton Avenue ditch down there where the city has been plagued for decades. That'll be a collaboration we need to talk with the city about, because I think after we do the portion that we're talking about, especially we do the wet bottom, right, we'll pretty much be taking care of, I think, the issues that we have in the unincorporated area. But a bigger collaboration with the city, I think, is in order. The property that we're working on obtaining is in the township, but it'll directly affect eliminating flooding in the incorporated area, and I'm hopeful that the city will see the benefit to coming to the table and working collaboratively with us to serve that area of our community together in the future.
I've seen how bad the flooding is there in Sheffield at 254 and in Clinton. I was in a meeting one day. I think I've told you guys the story, and an individual came running in the building saying, "Everybody move their cars, the parking lot's flooding." I swear there was less than an inch away from going into my car door, and moved the cars quickly. And people don't realize, because I often was concerned about, geez, if we had a really bad rainstorm, it'd be tough to get in and out of the Board of Elections on a voting day. It would be difficult. Thank goodness our parking lot doesn't flood like the area around it. But after some wet socks and shoes and pants that day, I found out firsthand. But it was a close call getting the car out of there. But it's really bad, and it's really bad for Sheffield Township when it floods like that.
Yeah, and Don hit on an element that I want to stress again. Every federal dollar that we're able to bring here, not only do we restore areas of our community, not only do we provide habitat and beautification, not only do we send better water to Lake Erie out of the watershed, we also provide economic stimulation. It's an accepted fact that dollars turn between 3 and 5 times. People will routinely accept that as an economic multiplier. Even if we took the low end, the project will have generated close to $2 million of economic impact on the low end of the equation. and we're working on other projects with federal dollars. The key is to bring back the dollars that are sent to Washington and sent to the state, to bring them back to our community so that we have benefit of that stimulation here. And that's our job, and that's what we do. More and more we're going to be making these presentations. We do a lot of work. We don't spend a lot of time telling people about it. We need to spend more time telling people about it. I think that's always been a problem with me. I've always been more about
Just getting it done.
Getting it done and looking for the next opportunity than talking a lot about it. But we'll keep bringing these projects to you. You saw we had a ditch hearing yesterday. You saw some of the similar conditions on that ditch, some of the things that we brought forward. Don and I had quite a lengthy conversation yesterday afternoon. Don sent me a very, very productive email about his thinking on what we may be able to do out with that ditch. Some of these things can and may be available out there to help those folks in a similar manner. Clear cutting and regrading and dipping a ditch is not the only option about how to control footing. So we have to really rethink, what we want to do with things. And once we have willing partners, we can produce better results. I was happy how the meeting actually turned out yesterday. There was still a few angry people, but I think they had a new perspective on working with us.
Right.
Their anger was directed towards lots of other people, but I'm going to make sure that they'll come away with a better working relationship. I'm not sure we'll please them all, but we're going to have a better working relationship, them working with us.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Dan. Nice job, guys.
Good job.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Commissioners report.
Well, my report for Friday kind of ties in a little bit. I had my NRAC meeting, which is Natural Resource Council, and what we do is we get about a little over $1 million a year, us in Medina County, and what we do is we acquire properties, we pay for properties, and keep them in their natural state. So we had to meet this past Friday. We didn't do any ranking of projects, but they changed a rule that a project that was funded by NRAC dollars can now come back and ask for money for improving those properties, which could go for parking lots and trails and things of that nature. So we had to meet to talk about how we are going to go forward with that, because it could impact the money that we get. And our goal is always to acquire properties and keep them in their natural state. So we don't want to spend a lot of money on improvements or construction projects. So then what else did we do? Saturday, Commissioner Lundy and I were in the duct tape parade. It's one of the longest parade routes. And so
It's a marathon.
We got our exercise.
I heard you were on the south end of a northbound train.
We were at the end. Luckily, they let us go before the ponies, so we didn't have to walk through pony poo-poo. So it was a nice parade, though. Really good weather, so thank you to everybody that came out for that. And as Mr. Cortez said, we had our public hearing yesterday for the Luther Ditch. We did continue that till August 1st to let the engineers have an opportunity. There was a couple of people that were not allowing us to go on their property. They said that they would, and then another person that we had not gone on their property also, and I'm going to go see what they have there. So it was a productive meeting. We got a lot of good information that went through, and then what else? Oh, yesterday, John Hunter's 75th birthday party at Harry Buffalo. So happy birthday, John Hunter. End of my report.
Wonderful. Yeah, busy week. Friday, I was in Columbus County Commissioners Association. We've been working with the state Senate now on trying to get additional dollars in the upcoming budget. Recent reports that are received in emails that we've all received is a lot of the asks aren't in the final Senate version, especially in regards to the MCO sales tax, making us whole, and working on a project. Again, down there working with all the other commissioners and those across the state who have been testifying and trying to talk our senators into helping us. Doesn't look like it's going to do anything.
It's a big hole for us.
It's a big hole. Could be up to $2 million a year. So we'll see what happens. They'll do conference committee now, and however that works, and you're the expert in regards if there's anything else that could be done. Also,
Things have been put in the bills in conference committee that weren't even talked about in the House or Senate. There was even a column about that in the Plain Dealer. You're not supposed to do that.
they do it, because we discussed that.
They do that.
When I was in Columbus Friday, they just added right then.
Right, but they came up short on, their projected revenue, and they found out that some of the tax expenditures actually caused the state to lose more money than they thought they were going to lose, and if they don't close some of those loopholes or reconfigure those, then what ends up happening is local government gets impacted and everybody else, yet we continue to sit on that $2 billion surplus.
Well, also in regards, they talk about opiate funding, as I spoke to Elaine this morning, additional dollars there, but it looks like it's going to come out of local government funds. So they'll reduce us to backfill that. And then lucky for us, we're one of the top 10 counties, I guess. I don't know if it's necessarily lucky, but the TCAP legislation, where fifth-degree felonies won't be fifth-degree felonies necessarily. They are able to be sent to prison. We're going to have to work here with them, and they will fund us to keep them out of prison. But they did put some language in at the end that says, after multiple times with the person, you can still end up getting them to a state facility, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out, anytime the state, and John Lutz did, I haven't gotten back to him, but he wants to have a conversation from CCO. I'm trying to figure out what the state's going to fund and what they're not. Every time they say they're going to fund us, I get very suspicious.
Right.
PSI, case in point, they were going to fund us, right?
Right.
I think at the end of the day, we're going to end up bearing the blunt of all of this and absorbing that cost. It's probably going to be a temporary Band-Aid, but I think it's going to fully fall on us in the coming years.
Well, it's every couple of years they redo the budget, so the next round can do whatever they so choose in regards to this, but this was a big push. We actually had a meeting with Gary Moore, the director of corrections, and he was talking about how this is a benefit to the counties.
I don't understand.
As the state lessens their amount of population in their state.
But how is that a benefit to us?
It was discussed, we opposed it, and the Senate and the House are making it happen in the next week or so. So we'll see. The sheriff has sent some correspondence on it that I've seen. So we'll just see how it works out when they make up all the rules. They're saying to do something, then they have to figure out what the rules are going to be.
Well, that's it. I mean, there's not a clear line of sight to exactly what's going to happen here. So it's really hard to understand the impact and the challenges that we're going to be facing.
Well, what we're going to work on in your discussion with John Lights was getting together sheriffs from the top 10 counties, again, from the commissioner sides and/or administrators, and hopefully some of the common pleas judges on how this is actually going to work moving forward, so we can have some discussion points. Everybody's sort of like on the same page on how it will happen. Some of you that'll bring Sherry into it. I don't know how much you've done in regards to this, but it looks like it's going to be something pretty. Come on, you can come join us if you'd like to.
Well, I think Beth will be looking into it.
Oh, you've got Beth doing it? Okay, all right, then we won't put you on the spot.
Yeah, Medina County is already participating in it, and we're getting some stats now.
Okay, so we'll see what moves forward on that. We do have good news. Our county land bank awarded an additional $1 million. A quote, according to recent analysis by OFA, Lorain County Land Bank has qualified for additional funds based on excellent performance on all levels, including project completion, reimbursement, and having exceeded required blighted housing acquisitions by over 100%. This reallocation will bring the total impact of land bank programs in Lorain County to over 600 blighted housing demolitions using almost $10 million of non-county funds since the beginning of 2013.
Great
So
news.
We get over $1 million more. So we're doing a good job up there. Congratulations to our Port Authority who's running that for us, Pat Metzger, and the whole team that's making it happen, the administrator, so, and the land bank board.
We're working real hard. As you know, I pay particular attention to all of that. It's been a challenge sometimes. I spoke to Holly at OFA earlier in the week. We had a little dip in our performance there for a little while because we were struggling because there was just so much work. We brought on some additional resources because we were just carrying too much, and we're back up there. We're the prize child again, and that's demonstrated in the amount. There was a limited amount of additional funds. We received a big portion of that additional award My understanding is only 4 land banks were given more money. We were one of the 4. One of my objectives last year, as I told the land bank board, and I discussed with you maybe out here and us sitting around, was to backlog as many homes as possible. That was risky, very risky, because we may be sitting on these with no money to deal with them, but I felt that I needed a backlog to make my case for additional funding. Without that backlog, I'm just talking about a need rather than demonstrating a need. So we rolled those dice and we came up with the right number.
So we have how many in queue for demo?
I can't give you a specific number, but it's plenty. Again, it was a little nerve-wracking because our DRETAC money is a good portion of that will go into permanent financing. Been recapitalizing the notes. We haven't really committed the debt service on the match to the original money from the Attorney General's office. That's a couple $1 million. So in order to keep cash flow, I've been recapitalizing interest on short-term notes, but I'm running out of time on that, and I think this fall I'll go to permanent financing, which will probably take about $120,000 or $130,000 out of available cash flow and dedicate it to permanent financing for 20 years. I'm just not going to have a choice. I can only recapitalize interest on. I can only do short-term borrowing so many years, and then I have no choice. So that's going to restrict cash on that level. And then, of course, on all the Attorney General properties, the ongoing maintenance wasn't built into the program, so we're carrying the maintenance cost on all of those properties. And while it's not hugely expensive, it does add up rather quickly. But another good piece of news is that OFER has recently changed some of the on the ground rules with regard to maintenance. We are now able to build into the overall closure cost of these homes and get additional years of maintenance money that we put into restricted funds to deal with the maintenance. Before it was 3 years. Now it can be up to 10 years. So we have to come up with a cost analysis of how we charge that into the grant, because the grant does, each home does close, so then they have to accept that cost analysis. And it's really hard to look out 10 years and figure out what you're doing, and then there's some clawback provisions should the property transfer ownership, et cetera, et cetera. And you do know OFER properties are a little bit harder to dispose of because there's restrictions on those properties and how they can be handled. And something that we don't talk enough about probably, OFER properties must be purchased. The land bank and then to the port, they must be owned, they must be purchased. That's a bit problematic. And so when we go after them, we sometimes have to pay money to get these dilapidated properties. And a couple people approached me and kind of aggravated that we bought these some of them have back taxes on them and they're garbage, and we paid somebody a few $1,000s for them. We're trying to get them out of the community. Right. It takes too long to take them through a very lengthy process. We're not always successful, so we have been pursuing. The federal dollars are there vis-a-vis the state to do this.
Did they raise the cap or the ceiling on the?
They did. I don't want to say how much it is, but they did raise that cap. Before we had a significantly lower cap, so it was a little bit challenging because a lot of times the property value was and especially in a better community, the house and was half burned down and was worthless, but the property had some value. So we're working on it. I give OFER a lot of credit at the state level. They're changing and morphing as the environment changes, as they get their learning curve under control. I really like working with them. Holly's the director down there. Her and I talk every few weeks, and I think the product is really good. The key to our success is figuring out what she needs to be successful there, so we can feed her the right stuff, and she can make us successful here by continuing to fund us and understand our needs at this level. So pretty proud of our work there, but we are still working long-term with the understanding that money is not going to be available all the time, and we're going to have still long-term problems with property placement and what to do with all this towards the end. What we need is, the federal government's been good at giving us money to knock stuff down and deal with that end, but we need some real help with community revitalization. It's got to be, it's a necessary component, we need it, and we also need a somewhat of a commercial component to get in there. As you know, the Port Authority's been working a little bit in downtown Elyria, some in downtown Lorain. We have very, very limited funds, and we're trying to do a lot with a little. We need some help. So I'll leave it at that.
It's a big announcement. I mean, to be one of only 4 counties to receive additional resources, it says that we're doing the job and doing it well and dotting our I's and crossing our T's. But a lot of folks don't realize all the work behind the scenes that takes place with Pat and yourself and Chris Panowski. That guy's an amazing, amazing man. Dan Telerik, the whole group, and I know it's been a learning experience for me over the past 2.5 years. But just to go to those sites and see the neighbors, and the neighbors are so happy that the drug house or the trouble house is finally coming down, and you can see how we're changing communities and changing neighborhoods, and in the long run, I think that's going to help with property values, and everybody benefits in the long run. But it says a lot for the state to say you're doing the job and doing it well enough that you're one of 4 counties that's going to get additional funds, and funds of $1 million.
So your 8 years in Columbus paid off. We got the land bank.
Yeah, right.
So here's my last comment, and it's
one good thing. One good thing in 8 years.
And I probably shouldn't say it, but in your face, Jim Rackakis.
End of my report.
And also, don't forget about the fact that Chris Pianowski and Dan Telerik, and we've gone after those properties that are delinquent, and $10 million worth of taxes collected.
Well, let me give you another figure that Chris and I have had conversation with, and as you know, at the end of the month, I'm going to take a short vacation. I don't know if it's much deserved, but I'm taking it anyway. So I'll be gone for about 10 days, but when I get back, Chris and I are going to meet, and a few other people. We've been very successful because before, when we tried to collect these property taxes, we didn't have the ability to get in there behind those things, and now we do. So people know we're serious. We were let me take that back. We were always serious, but the alternative, there was no teeth in it.
There was
no mechanism.
There was no mechanism.
And now there's a lot of teeth in it. These people with properties that have some value, the land bank's standing there. You either pony up, do the right thing, do what you're supposed to do, or the land bank is going to be standing taking your property as soon as they get it through the foreclosure, through the tax foreclosure, whatever the mechanism we need. So there's a lot of teeth. It's just not saber rattling. They're going to pull the saber out, and they're going to slice you up a bit.
And there was talk about the fact that the county now has $10 million.
No,
that money does not come to us.
$1.64 very insignificant
out
amount
of 100 comes
mostly
to the
school
county.
districts. Mostly school districts. And I think that, initially when the land bank did the additional DRETAC, there was some outcry because a little bit of that penalty used to go back to the schools. And remember, I'm not going to say who, a previous legislative leader in the community, made a big issue that we were taking money from the schools. Well,
now
actually,
look how much they're getting back now.
We've given back a lot more money to the school district vis-a-vis these collections than was ever taken to that small amount of DRETAC money that we used to operate on. But that's water under the bridge. It's about the success moving forward, not the poor decisions of the past. But the figure I want to talk about is that we now have almost $10 million in liens that we've successfully, and Chris has successfully exercised through the judicial process, that we have to talk about what we want to do with those liens, if anything. Some may be collectible, some may not be collectible, but he and I want to come up with some kind of plan rather than just let them lay dormant on a lot of these properties. While I don't want to chase people around and persecute folks, there are still people that didn't do the right things on some of these properties, speculated in real estate and being landlords, gave up on their property, abandoned them, but they still have resources. Now, the liens are against those properties, but those liens can be exercised against other assets. And while we have settled some of those liens, and I'm going to say how we settled them, we have a little formula that we try to follow, but you don't want to play your hand on the table. I want to come up with the program and talk about those options and then get into those funds and see how much we can raise on those liens and bring some of that money back to our community too. Recognizing we're going after the folks that had the ability to do better and just chose not to. So that'll happen later in the summertime when we'll be back to see you and the land bank on what some of those options are. But we're tracking well. We're doing good. And the $1 million is, we still need more though.
Right.
Yeah, I do
It's a
think
nice addition, though. It's a nice addition.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And I do think it's important to clarify, Lori's comment that, because I continue to see online because of the $10 million in delinquent property taxes collected, now the county has $10 million surplus and all this other nonsense, but $163,000 was our portion of that
Right.
take when you break down the whole formula, and as we said, most of that goes to the schools. So if somebody stops you on the street and asks you about that one, please correct them. My turn?
Yeah.
Your turn.
Thank you. Just
Nope, sorry, time's up.
yeah, I know.
Give him his 3 minutes.
Yeah, you don't want to hear me
Madam
ramble.
President.
Okay, thank you very much. First, I want to congratulate the Kiwanis on the Strawberry Festival. You forgot that in your report. You were there as well too.
Yes,
so
I
you
was.
got lots
I'm
of
sorry.
stuff going on. That's okay. But saw Ted there as well too. It's always, like I said, that's the one day I skip dinner. I just have the strawberries and the ice cream and get my sugar buzz for the day. Want to congratulate business leaders in North Ridgeville. They're going to be recognized tomorrow at a special luncheon by North Ridgeville Chamber. We were supposed to have the awards last Thursday, and I pulled in the parking lot. Nobody was there. I didn't know that the power had gone out at Tom's Country Place, and the event was canceled. Of course, the message was on my phone when I came into the office, but a little too late. Just wanted to wish LCC student Tim Kresman good luck. He's a student who called me to interview me about public service and life and politics, and we had a real nice conversation. Students do that every once in a while from the college, and always glad to be interviewed and help out on that. Township trustees meeting we had in Wellington Township. I know the land bank came up there. Some of the townships talking about having some properties they'd like to get in the queue, and all I can ever say is, we can't read your mind, so you got to let us know where those properties are, but we're here to help you, and obviously you can see by the announcement today that we're running a good program. Was in on a conference call that First Energy held on Friday concerning zero emissions with their nuclear plants, and wow, I think it's going to be hard to get buy-in from me on that, the way that's all structured. The way that breaks down for me is when I look at it, it's about 15 years worth of subsidies that probably are about $12 billion in subsidies over 15 years for First Energy. And then First Energy says that if the customers will end up paying, if they don't get this subsidy, to the tune of $1.2 billion over 10 years. Do the math. It certainly doesn't look like a good plan for the consumers, which I understand would have to pay about $5 more a month on that plan. But it was an interesting to hear their side of the story. The duct tape parade, I think that's the longest parade that we're ever in, right? But it was well attended, as always, and yes, we're always thankful to go ahead of the horses. And I've been in parades where I've been behind the motorcycles when they're doing the burnouts, and smelling all that smoke's not delightful by any means. I made my way over the Juneteenth Blues Fest there at Lakeview on Sunday, and as I got closer and closer, the skies got darker and darker. I swear to you, I got 2 blocks from there, and the skies just opened up. It was pouring. I pulled into the lot. Everybody's running to their cars.
It's right around 4 o'clock.
Yeah,
Yep,
so
same issue.
Made a U-turn and headed back. So, had the opportunity to be interviewed on WEOL radio. Was there with Jen Kennedy with our Visitors Bureau. They were there at Lakeview Park and talking to a lot of Lorain businesses and Lorain council people and the mayor and everybody else, and just shows you the beauty of the lakefront. Excuse me. And just wanted to give you a quick update from our Visitors Bureau. We've determined through the Cabela's tournament there are about 251 teams. Those are teams of 2. About 75 fishermen actually came from Wisconsin alone. As I said the other week, ran into fishermen from Oklahoma, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, all over the place, but we know 75 of them at least came from Wisconsin. And on average, each two-person team, we believe, spent approximately $500 per day. You know, that's for staying in town, eating, so on and so forth. They stayed for about 6 nights. And don't forget those incidental supplies and fishing hardware, the lures, reels, all those things. Got real positive feedback. Avon Lake was reporting their public boat ramp saw an increase of approximately 50 boats using the ramp during the tournament days. I think they were going out early before the tournament started just to try to scope out the waters and find out where the good fishing holes were. And then Craig Lewis, who's the owner of Erie Outfitters, he claims that he did the same amount in sales in a, he said, a 4-day period that he would usually see in a whole month. So that's just to indicate the economic impact of having an event like that in our county. We're pleased to work in partnership with the Port Authority, and just was really showcased Lorain County and our beautiful lakefront. Also had the Luther Ditch hearing the other day. As we always stress to those residents and to all the residents, you know, we have a professional staff of people always willing to work with the residents, try to minimize the loss of trees and all those things when we have to get back in there and clear out ditches. But you know, the reality is that it's important for everybody to be a good neighbor, hopefully grant us access so we can get in there, work on the ditches, because, you know, it could be your property flooding next time. This time it may be your neighbor. We got to get in and clear those things out. John Hunter, 75. Boy, I hope I have his energy when I'm 75 years old. The guy's just amazing. And then this morning, ran over there and then ran here for the meeting, the international breakfast. Always greeted by the beautiful princesses as you come in the door. But a nice turnout there this morning, and hoping we have good weather for the international this weekend. And I think we've got another parade, right, on Sunday?
Sunday. Oh, real quick, just to add before you, we have 250 houses in the queue for the land bank.
Is it 250?
Yeah, Tony Ann. Got it
Yeah,
from
I
Pat.
just didn't have it on top of my head.
Yeah, 250 in the queue yet to come down, so.
And I did want to point out our Visitors Bureau is going to be a sponsor for the Cleveland Pops coming in Elyria during the summer. So
It's a great event.
It's a great event. Brings in a lot of people.
Now,
a lot of people.
This year it won't be on the steps of the courthouse, obviously.
Right.
But next year, I promise that it'll be on the beautiful, restored front of the courthouse. But I just wasn't able to make that cutoff this year. But we are sponsoring what is a great event in downtown Elyria. And by the way, we haven't had a chance to go past Pioneer Park.
That's
I
beautiful.
think the city's
Yeah,
done a
they
really
did a
nice
great
job
job.
over there in Pioneer Park. It's really looking lovely, what they've done with that old site where it was former Granston City Hall. City Hall was. But also the Best of Lorain County is coming up. I'm trying to remember the date.
20th? No.
Back in my mind here.
18th, I think.
Is it the 18th? Did you
remember somewhere in there?
July 12th?
I
have to look.
do you have
It's on my desk.
We'll check on that.
I
Well, we got these beautiful downtowns in Lorain County. We don't have those fake downtowns, right? We have real downtowns here.
Well, we haven't manufactured our downtown.
The 13th.
July 13th,
July 13th.
6 to 9 at the
Lorain-
college.
Lorain County Community College, Spitzer Conference Center. It's a big event. We had-
$20.
Had almost 800 people out there last year. So it's the best of Lorain County. I'll have over 60 vendors. There's food, there's drink, there'll be music. Come out, support the locals. We'll have our tables out there. You'll come out and meet some of our folks. The Visitors Bureau will be out there. Pulse Magazine will be out there. It's sponsored by a lot of local vendors too. So I'll get that on our social media. But it's a really nice event to showcase some of the folks here in Lorain County.
Is that end of your
Yes,
report?
that completes my report.
Okay.
Correspondence.
I move we approve the correspondence and waive the readings.
Second.
Further discussion? Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Public comment?
Anybody wishing to address the board this morning? We have some takers.
Good morning, Mr. Heidecker.
Good morning, morning.
Good morning.
You made it through the
I have
whole,
to sit on this side of the bench.
Dick, you made it through the whole meeting?
Well, I told you all I'd come back this week and tell you about our shred day.
Okay.
You
And
did.
first of all, I have to compliment you on your crew because they're fantastic. They're easy to work with. I've worked with private people who only come out with one person. You come out with 3. They have signage. It's great. You know, it's like you getting married. You don't know what you're ending up with, but it was a great partnership. To tell you the truth.
What an
Fantastic.
analogy.
Except Ted, he did it twice.
I'll have
And he
49
complained, and he complained both times.
Twice.
Anyways, we only did 3,300 pounds. The furthest one that came away from was New Russia. We did shred stuff that was probably 35, 40 years old, I could tell you just by looking at it. People did try to slip in CDs. We went through them. In fact, we had it in our new service garage. Service director got there at 8. There was one car there. She wanted to leave her stuff, and he said, no, wait till the truck gets there. They get there about 8:30. We had another car. Between 9 and 11, 4 of us were hustling. From 11 to 12, there was only 3. So 9 to 12 was a good period. So I'd just like to thank you, and I think that's a great idea. So
Glad it was a
Wonderful.
success.
that's it. No, it was great. It was fantastic.
Good.
Very well done. Crew was well trained, everything, so I had no problems. So that's
Nice.
it.
Thank
Always
you.
good
Thank
to
you,
partner
thank
with our friends in Columbia, Dick.
you. Morning.
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 Good morning, Jeff Baxter. Good morning, Commissioners and Board. I want to give you a report of my activities since last week when I spoke. It included capturing petitions at a number of Lorain County locations to repeal the sales tax increase. This includes a Rockin' on the River events, the Vermilion Fish Festival, the Duct Tape Festival, and numerous other events and locations throughout the county. As I personally talked with hundreds of voters, I report that the voters are not happy with the sales tax increase situation. They're appalled at how this tax increase was orchestrated and implemented. The voters want to know why the commissioners wasted time by even putting it on the ballot. The voters tell me they do not trust the commissioners. As I said last week, this board has a severe communication problem with the voters, and I really do believe that's true. So today I want to ask you to take these actions. Number 1, immediately pass an emergency resolution to stop collecting the tax after just 1 year. Do this next week. 2, publish detailed plans for how the money that is coming in will be spent. 3, work with the state legislators to get some of the $2 billion surplus that is in Columbus. Quit playing party politics with this statement. 4, look to put a renewable increase on the ballot in a future year that's backed by mayors, community leaders, and concerned citizens. Include the townships. I will help. 5, create a rainy day fund with the budget and stick with it. 6, don't impose your will after the voters have spoken at the polls. Thank you.
Anyone else? We missed you since last week.
I was here last week.
I said we missed you since last week.
Gerald Phillips, 461 Windward Way, Avon Lake, Ohio. It was nice to see Commissioner Lundy and Kokoski at the Avon Duct Tape
We
Festival.
weren't sure if that was you. We saw somebody walking. I said, I think
Parade.
that's Gerald.
I had the hat on.
Yeah, they had that.
I waved. You were in the parade. I was like Mr. Baxter, getting signatures at the parade. I was at other locations on the weekend too. And one of the byproducts of the petitioning process, you really get an opinion and a sentiment of the public from the voters and the taxpayers. And as a result of that, the commissioners in this county government's got a huge PR problem. The opinion of the people out there, your approval rating is worse than Donald J. Trump, and I don't think you want to be in that category or group. And that's fueling this District 7 efforts to change county government. And just publicly, if it hasn't gotten back to you, I'm not getting signatures for that effort, okay? But the taxpayers and voters are really angry. And what I see is this is spilling over into other tax levies, the 9/11 and your Lorain County Task Force levy. And you got a huge problem, okay? You know, and those are worthwhile things that that's needed for the county. So I hope you pursue what you indicated last meeting about the education and the transparency, you know, of those process, you know, and get the community involved, because you got to educate the public, okay? They hear things, and you made comments were made that the $10 million, they think you're getting it, but there's misconceptions, and you got to educate them, okay? And you got to confuse this anti-commissioners and anti-tax settlement, or otherwise, good things won't get done. Columbia Township retained me to help them in connection with their opposition to the annexation. And people who know me in that community, I've been active in Columbia Township on both sides of the fence in sense of representing citizen groups on petitions. I opposed the annexation when Mr. Carney did that. I've represented developers. We sued the township. We had a settlement. Jerry Ennis was involved. I worked with the commissioners, Mr. Cordes, with the landowners' agreements and petitions to bring SOARs, to promote development there. I mean, that's a border of Lorain County and Cuyahoga County. So, the township trustees out there realize that that I really cared about Columbia Township, even though I've been on opposite sides. And I'm concerned about it, and not just the township, but it also involves the county, because it is a county border. And this annexation would harm not just the township, but the county. But I think that the township trustees in their wisdom realize that, we may have been on opposite sides. I'm very, very passionate when I represent my clients, and they realize that, I'm not really their enemy, but in this particular case, I can help them out. And I want to protect the borders of Lorain County. Last meeting, I try to convey that I hope you don't perceive me as an enemy on the sales tax issue. We just have difference of opinions and views on that. And anybody who knows me knows that I've been active many, many years in right to vote in the petitioning process. In Lorain County alone, Avon, Sheffield Lake, North Ridgeville, Wellington, Pittsfield, LaGrange, Elyria. I've been involved in that. So this issue on the sales tax, it's that passion, for that process, because I think that process is important to democracy, the foundation, and debate. It doesn't mean that my view on that issue, but I do believe that if you stonewall that process and you throw up barriers, then it's harmful to democracy and good government. In March, I tried to convey that message that you need to rethink this issue about the sales tax. April, I was here. Last week, I was here. Jeff Baxter has made some comments. I would hope that there's an open mind in connection with those comments for a possible resolution. As far as pursuing that, he's offered some suggestions. I don't know if they're good or bad, but from my perspective, I listened to him. It's least worth considering, and I'm considering it. Okay, and there's a short window of opportunity to potentially, resolve this issue in a win-win for both sides. I've reached out to Jerry Ennis, and I'm going to talked to him about what we could or maybe possibly do to resolve this dilemma over the sales tax, taking into consideration some of Mr. Baxter's comments. As I mentioned last week, I've been a resident in Lorain County for 34 years, and I care about it. And we're not enemies. We just have a difference of opinion, and I'm just passionate about the right to vote in the petitioning process. And I thanked one of your presenters today, Elaine, about that issue. I told her that I thanked her for the presentation. I thanked her for her work. Because the subject matter that she spoke of, struck home in my community of Avon Lake. I attend services at St. Joe's Parish, and recently an eighth grade student committed suicide. And, we need to address those problems. And I would hate to see that we can't pass levies that deal with drug addiction, alcohol, and issues like she presented, because voters in this county are angry, okay? And they don't think clearly, and they transfer that anger for what's bad for the county. Thank you.
Seeing no one else, I move that we go into executive session outlined by the administrator and assistant county prosecutor.
Second.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kalo.
Aye.
Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
This has been a broadcast of the recent Lorain County Commissioners' General Meeting. Unless otherwise announced, meetings are held Wednesday morning at 9:30 at the Administration Building, 226 Middle Avenue, 4th floor, downtown Elyria. These are public meetings, and you are invited to attend. Agendas are posted prior to the meeting at www.loraincounty.us. Click on Departments to see the Commissioners page, then click on View Agenda for a printable copy of the agenda.